Good evening, everyone. On the behalf of the 8th Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture Organizing Committee, I warmly welcome you all to today's student conclave on students against imperialism, students' movements and resistance in India today. This gathering brings together voices from across campuses to reflect on how global power, neoliberal policies, and shifting political realities shape our universities and our futures. At a time when democratic spaces are shrinking, such conversations become not just relevant but necessary. So I'll give a brief introduction to the speakers, the panelists, and I'm Noel. So we have Gopika, who is Vice President of JNU Students Union, and Sreshta from who is President of Pondicherry University Students Union, and Sooraj, who is a student activist and President of SFI Delhi, and Asika, Secretary of SFI HCU, I mean Hyderabad Central University unit, and Noel, who is a student activist from Delhi University, Nadia, who is a student activist from AUD, and Vivek, who is president of CUK Students Union. So I warmly welcome all of the panelists to this student conclave. I warmly welcome all of the listeners, all of the participants in this conclave. And I'm handing over to the moderator, who is Sudhira.
Good evening, guys. I'll just give a small brief about our topic today and the theme in general. So when we talk about imperialism, we often imagine something distant, something historical, right? But empires, colonies, maybe the British colonial rule in India, that's what comes to our mind. But imperialism did not end with just decolonization. It changed form. Colonialism was only a phase. Today, imperialism continues through global capitalism, driven not by armies, but by finance, markets, and economic structures. At its core, imperialism is not just political domination, it is the organization of the world economy in a way that enables economic domination. It structures the world such that some regions become centers of capital, while others become sources of labor, raw material, and markets. This structure is not accidental. From the very beginning, capitalism depended on regions outside itself. The Industrial Revolution in Britain, for instance, was built on raw materials like cotton that it could not produce domestically. Capitalism, therefore, has always required an external setting to sustain itself. But it was not enough for these regions to simply supply raw material. They also had to function as markets. For that to happen, local economies were systematically restructured. Local industries were displaced, production patterns were altered, and crucially, local populations were kept at low levels of consumption. This is because capitalism faces a fundamental problem. If demand falls, it leads to overproduction and unemployment. This is the Keynesian concept of when people choose to hold money rather than to spend it. Demand collapses and economies can spiral into crisis. Capitalism, therefore, constantly requires new markets to absorb its goods. This is where imperialism becomes essential. It ensures access to raw materials, expands markets, and suppresses local demand where necessary. Even today, in the era of globalization, this logic continues, though in a different form. The world is no longer neatly divided into colonies and metropoles, but the underlying structure has not disappeared. It has just been reconfigured. Workers across countries are now tied to a single global system where wages are suppressed by local competition, labor reserves weaken bargaining power, and inequality rises. If we read the work of Prabhat Patnaik, we can understand how this leads to a declining share of wages globally and a persistent crisis of demand. Countries like India are definitely not outside the system. They are central to it. Our labor, our markets, and our policies are shaped by the needs of the global capital. And this is where students come in. Students have historically been at the forefront of recognizing and resisting such structures. In India, too, students have resisted domination in its changing forms because today, imperialism, as said, does not arrive through conquest. It operates through financial flows, trade regimes, privatization, and the restructuring of education itself. Universities are increasingly being turned into markets. So when students protest fee hikes, they're not just demanding affordability, they are resisting the commodification of education itself. When they speak about unemployment, they're not just asking for jobs, they're questioning a system where productivity rises but wages stagnate and demand remains insufficient. And when students organize, they challenge a system that depends on inequality, dependence, and a controlled underdevelopment. So, this conversation, Students Against Imperialism, which is our topic, is not just abstract. It is about recognizing how power operates today. The question is no longer whether imperialism exists. The question is whether we can recognize it in its new forms, in markets, in policies, and in our own institutions. And more importantly, whether we will resist it. Because historically, every time systems of domination have seemed permanent, students have been the ones to expose their contradictions. And perhaps today, once again, the responsibility of exposing this rests with us. I would like to progress on to the speakers. Can we have the first speaker? Manu, could you just introduce the first speaker and we can... Our first speaker is Sooraj. Can we have Sooraj? Can we have just 5 to 8 minutes of some opinions that you have on this topic and the theme?
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, comrade, you are.
Hi. Hello, comrades. So, first of all, I would like to thank the BSML organizing committee for holding this students' conclave on a very important topic on students against imperialism and student movements and resistance in India. I'm studying in Delhi. I've studied in universities across Delhi, from Delhi University. I've done my bachelor's from Delhi University. I did my master's from Ambedkar University Delhi, and I'm currently pursuing my PhD from Jamia Millia Islamia. And I have been seeing the campuses, about how they have been, how campus spaces have been shrinking, and about how student movements have shaped in Delhi over the past couple of years, past 7-8 years as such, for which I can have a relatively discuss here. Also, this topic itself is relevant because when we usually talk about students' resistance and movements, we usually talk about our immediate resistance that we face in campuses. Like there are student representatives from universities across the country. When topics like this usually comes, we talk about about our direct fights between students and the direct opposition, that is the administration, or whether it is ABVP, or whether at most the state government, who in my case is BJP, and so on and so forth. But when we talk about students against imperialism, we broaden the scope and we can connect it to further about how the larger student resistance, or the student, about how education in itself have been shaped historically, and with the current imperialist attacks on education across the country, but how that influence is being reflected upon the education system in India also at this moment. The US, for example, we have always read and studied about how public education is fundamentally non-existent in a country like the US, where students, if they have to opt for higher education, they have to take huge student loans, and then they have to spend the rest of their life trying to repay these loans. And once their education is over, then they have to probably take their job in a private sector, and again where their labor is exploited and are given wages, and with that wages they're having to pay back their student loans, through which they got their skills developed, for which nobody is paying you or nobody is helping you to get your skills developed. You have to pay, you have to take loans yourself, and again you have to come and work in a sector in which you are again exploited, where we see this system where there is exploitation from all corners that students are facing. And that is exactly where I think Sudhir has also pointed about how students are basically commodities for markets, where we are bred for the market or for the corporates, where our existence and our individual abilities are not taken into account. And again, in the Indian context, it is such a model that is being trying to with all the policies and all the new innovations and all the interventions that the central government has been putting on our education system, we can see similar models are being experimented here in this country, where historically, I mean, since independence, with the with the intervention of various scholars and thinkers from Ambedkar to Tagore, have developed a model of a public education system where the focus was on the most marginalized or the most oppressed getting access to the education system. But that, of course, changed from the 1980s onwards, where we see with the LPG, the liberalization, privatization, and globalization initiatives. Now we are facing another LPG crisis, which I'll come to later, which the students are under attack. But from then onwards to this day, where we see that every year the conditions of the students are getting worsened, weaker, and parallelly to it, where we are optimistically looking into it, where the student movements, on the other hand, is also getting stronger and stronger across the country. 8 years ago, when I first came to Delhi, I was a student of Delhi University, where protests were a very normal, very accessible situation. I mean, things for condition for the students, where whenever a new development used to come, we used to immediately protest and we used to go back. Detentions used to be very rare, and even if we used to get detentions, FIRs and larger targeting used to be very limited. Students used to freely organize study circles inside their campuses, inside their colleges or the university spaces, where no one used to talk about. Where also, on the other hand, even the Teachers Association at that time was controlled by the left, which was the DTF in Delhi University. But over the years, of course, the DUSU, the Students Union, has always been the stronghold of the ABVP and also NSUI, which have controlled the union through their money and muscle, primarily because there has been no space for student discussions or debates in the student union in Delhi University as such. But over the years, we can see now, if students are having to do any program in any of the colleges in Delhi University, it has come to a situation where there is innumerous scrutiny, surveillance. If you're having to sit for a study circle, if you release a poster, we are getting 10, 20 calls from the IB. The principal coming and intervening when first year students are trying to even just sit together in 5-6 numbers and talking about student issues, larger, very common student issues, where the principals themselves are coming and affecting. I'm not going into the DU situation as such. I'm just coming to about how situations are changing across. In Ambedkar University also, we have a speaker who's going to talk about how students have been under attack with expulsions just for standing up and demanding their rights. Where 6-7 years ago, when I first came to Delhi, I used to see that Ambedkar University was seen as a haven for liberal arts, where an alternative to JNU for that matter, when students could just freely enter the college, who were from outside whenever they wanted to, when students could publicly organize, gather, book rooms, there were student-teacher solidarity. And all of it has been completely shifted, changed, where there is complete surveillance, expulsions, despite student union elections happening, which has been the context in which the situation in Delhi has been. Now coming to Jamia Millia Islami, where I'm currently studying, Jamia Millia Islami has always historically seen numerous scrutiny, for that matter, becoming a Muslim minority institution. Where last year in itself, we have seen for protesting, students have been suspended and had to put forward brave fights inside the campus for the suspensions to be revoked. The important thing about Jamia Millia Islamia in itself is that the administration, though belonging to the Muslim minority, most of them themselves have also been, over the process, been slowly integrated into the RSS nexus. Or the others who are not part of the nexus are also afraid to speak of, where teachers also are being under constantly targeted in coming up and coming in solidarity with the students in itself. There is academic repression. There is students, when they are political, are constantly being targeted, especially in PhD, by their supervisors. And also there are other scholars in the class, by denying work, or even to an extent of being failed in their coursework, which has also happened to our comrades for being political and for having spoken up against the system or against the administration as a whole. So this has been the larger trend and the shift of campus spaces. And JNU again, Gopika is here, and she herself has recently been to Tihar. All 4 office bearers have been expelled or suspended from the campus, happening for the first time in the history of JNU, where all the elected union office bearers are being expelled. So this pattern of expulsions and suspensions have been a very new developments. Although expulsions have happened in the past, suspensions for student movements have happened in the past, but such continuous targetings across universities in all campuses has become a very newer development in campuses in Delhi, where in all campuses where this is being seen and faced. While on the other hand, when in DU there is a ABVP-led DUSU, where even when you slap a professor, you are barely targeted or barely gotten a token punishment of 2 months, where they are taken back as soon as possible. Again, coming into the point about how students are not being let to protest or not being led to even become political. It is not that students, I mean, we always discuss about students are being depoliticized with the CUET and everything coming forward. Students are no longer interested in politics or wanting to come out, which is absolutely wrong. I think that is wrong in all campuses also. It is because the administration or about the patterns about our education system has drastically changed over the past 1-2 years, where now students, well, I was a bachelor student, I used to have a lot of free time in between classes to come and do activism thoroughly. We had spaces in our campus, where now we are absolutely having no space. Spaces are shrunk completely, where and students are having tight-knit schedules in which with compulsory attendance for them to even, which is a case in all campuses, for which they are unable to even come out and debate and discuss, and along with harassment from their faculty and professors have been a
Comrade, I'm so sorry, but we will have to move on to the moderated. Yeah, if you could finish within
yes, I'll just finishing. I was just talking about the general patterns in which we have the campuses in Delhi has been going through over the past couple of years, and I think that is the relevance of this topic itself, about having such discussion on the resistance and student movements. And I think the path forward is that we should always keep forward with us a sort of revolutionary optimism, because like I mentioned, there is targeting, but there is growth. Student movements have not gone weaker despite all of this targeting. In Delhi University, if you see, the left panel have been increasing their vote share every year despite all sorts of nexus between the powers. In Jamia, AUD, all such campuses, and in JNU, we have seen a growth of student movements and progressive student movements actively getting stronger. And I think the demands for campus democracies and student union elections need to continue much stronger for this movement to go forward and to wage our fight against the larger imperialist forces. I think I would like to end it here. Thank you once again for BSML organizing committee.
Thank you, comrade. We can move on to Sreshta. Comrade, would you like to? Yeah.
Am I good to go?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. First of all, revolutionary greetings. I see this as very intellectual and great space organized by you people. Often, as the previous speaker mentioned, it was the restraint that was imposed everywhere to control the voice of students that we see. And despite that, we peeking into the every corner and every common available space to discuss about these things is the need of our. And today, as we see into the topic, the students' involvement into the movements. Comrades, this is again the same question asked, the same answer given, the same restraint given by the administrators or the current serving states that we see. I want to just concentrate on the area that we part of India, where the fascism and the religion inside the politics was very rare concern. Because if you look into the recent comments that have been passed by the different leaders here also. Whenever we focus a comment on a religion, it was never even accepted by a, let's not speak about the opposition leader who would support the it wouldn't be never considered as a comment, because if you see, I can very much state this statement. Southern Indian states are states that have been ruled or maybe chaired by the leaders who have been atheists for the longer time, but not even a single temple have been destroyed. But despite over this, because the freedom of speech again, just because two individuals or two ideologies sit across the table in a negotiation doesn't mean one have the upper hand or one have the say towards the other's idea. And this was clearly seen from the recent 4 to 5 years, recent inside the academic spaces. And and the doors being open to this are very naive, very clear, that they knock it in an area in the name of safety, and they narrow down into curtailing the freedom of voices. Obviously, students are someone who analyze the or maybe recognize the problem bit prior, because we are on a constant business of research, and we are on the constant business of exploring the ideas, and through our energy of this age. A recent problem that we have faced inside this university, I would like to bring upon Pondicherry University. As I think comrades are all aware, previous year a huge protest was broke out inside the university regarding a sexual harasser, a professor. It was very cleanly bounded. Closed doors have been brought to the students by elevating them out of the ICC board, I could say. There was a case happened inside this Pondicherry University regarding reporting in a sexual harassment. It was reported in the August. To bring that on board, the comrades inside here, the union inside here, have broke out into a protest in which 20 of our comrades, general students including, were arrested. And this was again one of the biggest arrests that have ever resisted in the Pondicherry University. 26 comrades, including girls, 24 comrades, including 6 girls, have been arrested and kept inside the jail for an entire night. In despite of this, all of them, the students then very next day woke up, understanding the movement is not a single night struggle, and came up with the demand that mandate UGC regulations have to be imposed inside the ICC board inside a university, central university. It was very clearly planned thing that they have delayed an appointment of these students inside that ICC, and before the appointment, they have closed this case and have declared that the decision is out of the ICC. Now you can go for some other court. No, this clever exclusion. Again, why is this to be highlighted? The concentration of power again, the appointments. Who are behind these appointments, and how is the selections of these faculties is going, and weakening of the left ideology inside the faculty corridor, and constant vigilance over student gatherings. I remember a week ago, on a very random case, hashtag Stop War protests have been broken out inside the Pondicherry University. It was a space that we thought we would bring the space that would explain the geopolitics to the students, because we have most number of UG students here who come out of the school. So we thought this space can be used as a space to explain the geopolitics and bring to their notice that how it is important and how it is interrelated, the needs and also the production. And we saw within 15 to 20 minutes, entire administration and the security vigilance system was present there before the students being present. They are one step ahead of the afraid, that they don't even want to create that gap that student would even think. They are writing the textbook and teaching it and asking us to accept it as if it is the fact already. Despite the students come here, and another incident I would like to bring upon. A random meetup was happened by the council heads here and council leadership to the VC, when he was asked, like, said, what would we wanted to take something that would promote the democracy of the campus, democracy inside the campus, the political ideology of the students. Him deliberately stating that you are here to study, why don't you just study and leave the university? And the very next week, this very VC is seen with a saffron tag inside Salem, that is a place where ABVP state conference was held. Just because the appointment system, they are being backed by the appointment system, or the unions that are being left and led and backed by this ABRSM unions, or maybe in the central BJP unions, they are not even afraid of being questioned. They have left that phase. And then I again convey my revolutionary greetings to the comrades who have been facing those arrest and ruckus inside the Delhi. You stood really strong, and Pondicherry University also declares their solidarity towards you, comrades. That's it. I will rest here.
Thank you, Sreshta. We can move on to Vivek. Comrade, would you like to say a few thoughts? Manu, is Vivek in the meeting? Could you just check? We can move on to Gopika if Vivek isn't here. Yes, comrade.
Hello, am I audible?
You are, yes.
So first of all, thank you to the organizing team of Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture for having organized such an important talk, bringing together student activists from different universities and talking about imperialism. So like the moderator had, begun, imperialism always looks for us like a distant reality, something that we're facing but we're not directly affected with. It looks like something that we're seeing in textbook, we're reading theories about, we're seeing in the news channel, but something that's not directly affecting us. And as students also, several questions are raised when we start talking about imperialism and other things. So I would like to connect with that, and I would like to give an anecdote of that and then start with this in the 8 minutes that I have. So I come from JNU, and when the JNUSU elections, after we won the election, the left unity always raises slogans regarding Palestine. So when we were raising these slogans, free, free Palestine and others, when we were waving the flag of Palestine, the enormous amount of media that surrounded us then, mostly representatives from the Godi media, the first question that they came and asked is that, why are you raising slogans for the children dying in Gaza? Why are you raising slogans regarding Palestine? It's not something that we should be concerned about as citizens, as students of the country. Why don't you talk about more issues that are concerning the student community? And this sort of approach, you can see also Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad, their approach towards left organizations, progressive organizations, whenever they have taken up the issues of imperialism, when they have taken up anti-imperialist struggles, it is all beginning of a discourse regarding imperialism. The first and foremost attack from the right wing, from the ABP, is that, why are you guys discussing things that are not relevant to the student community? Why are you fixating on a war that is going on let's talk about issues that is directly reflective of our campus spaces. Let us talk about India first and foremost. But you can see that the war that is going on, that is being led by US and Israel against Iran, what that has done to the country is that LPG crisis has now erupted in our own mess and canteen spaces. So a war that is happening in one corner, one end of the world, is directly impacting the fact that we are not getting rotis in our messes, in our canteens. The tea has increased, the fee has hiked from 10 rupees to 15 rupees or 20 rupees. We're not getting fried items. The mess timing has been reduced, and you can see in Pondicherry University today itself there is a circular being released that the semester examination has been preponed and students are asked to go back to home only and only because of the LPG crisis. So imperialism and how students are impacting it on a direct basis. Earlier, what we had to explain to students in the manner about bringing in Prabhat Patnaik, bringing in other scholars and connecting how the economic policies are affecting us, how the neoliberalism is affecting us. This war and the direct impact of our failure in the foreign policy has made those issues very real in our kitchens, in our mess, in our canteens, and students are able to relate to it. So this is one thing that few days before this we were also commemorating the martyrdom of Sukhdev, of Rajguru, and of Bhagat Singh. And since this is a memorial lecture also commemorating the martyrdom of Bhagat Singh, the portrayal of Bhagat Singh by the right wing right now is stripping away, erasing all of the socialist ideas of Bhagat Singh, all of the anti-imperialist, anti-colonial values that Bhagat Singh had foregrounded. And Bhagat Singh is only being portrayed in the dictionary of RSS, in the vocabulary of ABVP, as an angry young man. Who fought in the freedom fight, and he was a nationalist. But if you actually read the history of Bhagat Singh, he was far from a nationalist. He was a true internationalist in all the senses possible. If you look at the people who Bhagat Singh drew inspiration from, be it Lenin, Marx, it was always the internationalist values, anti-imperialist values, anti-colonial values that guided Bhagat Singh. And today there is a complete erasure of that personality, complete erasure of that history. And people who did not even have an ounce to contribute in the freedom struggle have become the new flag bearers of nationalism. So I think in this juncture, it is very important for us to raise the issues of anti-imperialist cause, to talk about imperialism, because the Bharatiya Janata Party's core, if you see that India has historically had a stand that recognized the statehood of Palestine, that has extended solidarity with the people of Palestine, be it any government that had come into power. But you can see that by discrediting the anti-colonial, anti-imperialist struggle of the people of India, this government's major ally is Israel. And even in this war, you can see that it is a direct impact of the failure of the foreign policy. The fact that India refused to condemn the assassination of Khamenei. The fact that our Prime Minister chose to visit Israel in an opportune moment when it was at the breaking point of whether or not there will be a war. All of this has directly impacted our kitchens now, our messes now, our canteens now. So I think one of the topics that this memorial lecture also discusses is what is the way forward. I think this is precisely the moment for students, because students, if you see historically, have been part of several movements, and that movements have always been that point where you communicate directly and appeal to the masses. So this is the moment in history, I feel, where students, as the intellectual force of a country, can draw those linkages of why what is happening many miles away is directly impacting us, to draw those connections, articulate that and become the voices and try to explain it to the masses in a very clear form. And those
I'm so sorry, but we'll also have a moderated discussion right after this. So if we could just conclude this in a few minutes.
Sure. So I was saying that so this is the moment when we can collectively articulate, have better vocabulary about it, and lead movements, study circles within our campus spaces, and that is the way forward. Like the speakers before me have already spoken, there is a shrinkage of democratic spaces across universities, but we should not be afraid of that repression because the might of students is larger than the forces that we're dealing with. It is precisely this collective force of the students and the spark that we can ignite that the administration, the government, and the other forces are afraid of. So I would like to end here by thanking the organizing committee. If there are more things that you would like to know, we can definitely take that up during the Q&A and the moderated session. Thank you.
Thank you, comrade. We can move on to Vivek. Vivek, are you able to talk right now? Manu, could you just check in with Vivek about this? Niyati, could you guys just check in with Vivek? I think we can move on to Asika. Comrade, yes.
Yeah, am I audible, comrade?
You are.
Okay. Lal Salam, comrades, and actually, it's a kind of a homecoming feeling. I was the convener of second Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture when I was in TES, Mumbai, and I think it was the last physical Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture that we were able to hold. And then pandemic hits, and we know what is this administration doing, and yeah. So yeah, but it is just such a very special moment to be here, and always this lecture, especially the Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture, uh, has been the center of discussion, especially in a space like this, and has been carrying the kind of a large, huge legacy of carrying forward a kind of a movement. It also gives the idea of a continuity of our struggles, and it is it is very appreciable that it is continuing in whatever things that the administration has put in front of our comrades, and we were able to organize in a way that all the campuses of this are coming together and having a coordinated organizing committee and having this lecture, and it is such an amazing job the comrades are doing, and I'm really appreciable of it. Had to take that time out to do specifically say that. And most of the speakers around about like before me, comrades have said very specifically about like the importance of the topic and how it is how it is necessary that we talk about these things. And my experience being in, I think mostly I would talk from the point of view of HCU, since that is something that is little bit different when we compare or like when we see from the kind of happening. It's not that different in the way the kind of struggles that we are facing, are fighting, are seeing, but at least the specificities, the geographical things that differs when it comes to HCU in some extent. And first of all, I think HCU marked the very beginning of an era in student movement while the 2016 Rohit Vemula movement that has happened has started a very like important kind of a conversations in the university spaces, and has been marked by the history of its struggle, especially from that point of time. And we know the kind of specifically the issue that has been happening in our country, the way that this war has been going on, how, as comrades already mentioned, how this war has been affecting us students. Our canteens are closed, our messes under threat to be like maybe closed in the time of exam. Students are confused and panicked, and at this moment, at this kind of moments, we'll have to talk about what is important, what is imperialism. And it is also important that for the, I think many of us or most of us who are speaking here is also coming from the background of social sciences and from the history of like being part of the conversation discourse in the way that it is connected to our academics in some sort or some way. But there is a larger community, especially considering JNU, HCU, and all, whose students from non-social science backgrounds and science backgrounds, whose like whose kind of solidarity is far more important for us at this point of time. For HCU, I would say the immediate incidents or immediate moments that I would ask or like come to my mind regarding this particular topic would be the land movement that has happened in HCU last year. So we have seen, we have always has been talking about how CUET has affected our campuses, how NEP has been affecting our campuses. It is very important to bring back everything to the immediate important thing, that is NEP. Comrade has also told how they have systematically reduced the time for students. So the idea of education, as in like only sticking them into the classroom, and the classrooms has been attacked with various kind of political agendas, how the syllabuses has been taken out, how the kind of structure of education and the kind of courses that is given to students has been dictated by particularly by this Sangha Parivar nexus. On the top of it, it's not only Sangha Parivar. If you think about it, when we talk about imperialism, we always think about mostly think about wars or colonial things and all. But then the way that the international organizations such as IMF and World Bank has been continuously having this interest of the syllabuses of or the education systems of South Asian global South countries, and how they has been pushing forward an agenda or like the model of NEP. The model of NEP is what they are calling is the American model, the model that would work better for us. And how this NEP has given a way where people can take the exit options specifically, and they are very mindfully making a generation of gig workers, how they can be just have a degree, how they can just have a kind of a 1 year, 2 year degree, and how they would be enough for them to be given a job as a like especially at this point of time as in any gig economy situation, but they won't be an inconvenience when it comes to think about like an professionally or inconvenience when it comes to having a movement build or having a trade union build. So they are very specifically tailor making the education system in order to feed into the neoliberal agenda of like dividing people more and more and making sure that the capital is fed every point of time and the profit is made at what cost it may be. And at this and all over these things are happening. And when the specifically the yeah.
I'm very sorry, but the time for the next speaker has begun. But yeah, you can.
Yeah, just winding up. So, but I was just wanted to highlight the thing that even if all of this going on in 2025, when the land movement happened, the whole campus, along with the teachers, along with the civil society and larger NGOs and outside community, were able to make sure that a corporate state that is not even run by this BJP, by Congress, the corporate state has been defeated in front of a student movement, and the Supreme Court has to intervene and make sure the university land is protected. So what I'm saying is the hope is always to make sure that we are organizing, and whatever capacity, whatever limitation, the only way forward is to make sure that we are keep on organizing and we are continuing the struggle without a break in between. And I think that is the far most important thing. And of course, in the discussion on the rounds, if there is anything specifically comrades want to know, definitely I would be able to. Thank you.
Thank you, comrade. We can move on to Noel. Comrade.
Yeah, hello. Am I audible?
Yes, comrade.
Ha. So thank you, comrade, for like inviting me for the Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture. And like I have been looking forward to that. In the sense कि मतलब मैंने पहले भी भगत सिंह मेमोरियल लेक्चर अटेंड किए हैं, मैं जब ग्रेजुएशन में था. अब तो मैं पीएचडी में हूँ, एंड देन मतलब अभी 8 साल हो गए दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी में आकर मेरा. तो मैं जब टॉपिक के बारे में बात करूंगा तो मुझे मतलब जो मैंने कुछ चीजें मतलब मैंने पढ़ने की या फिर बैकग्राउंड पढ़ने की कोशिश की थी, तो मुझे लगा कि अमेरिकन इंपीरियलिज्म के बारे में बात करते वक्त अमेरिका का जो स्टूडेंट्स मूवमेंट भी हुआ था 1960s और 70s, उसके बारे में भी बात करने की जरूरत है. मतलब द क्रेडल ऑफ imperialism in the sense ki the dominance that America is trying to assert over different countries. तो मतलब हम देखते हैं कि across the decades like how manifestation of American imperialism happens. Sometimes they like explicitly go and topple the regimes that they think are anti-US or anti-capitalism even. As we saw in Korea, that happened. Later on Vietnam, across African countries and across all the countries who were previously colonized, where America had tried to assert their influence. And obviously, American imperialism reached the peak, particularly in the periods after World War II, when countries across the world, like the imperialists were trying to scramble for an advantageous position. एंड अमेरिका मतलब क्योंकि जब यूरोपियन फोर्सेस वीकेंड थे तो अमेरिका जाकर मतलब बाकी कंट्रीज के ऊपर अपने मिलिट्री पोस्ट लगाते हैं, एंड अदर थिंग्स आल्सो स्टार्ट हैपनिंग लेटर ऑन. मतलब इन द सेंस जो पहले जो स्टूडेंट्स मूवमेंट भी अमेरिकन इंपीरियलिज्म के खिलाफ अमेरिका में खुद लड़ी जा रही थी, दैट वाज मोर और लेस लाइक पैसिफिस्ट, पर्टिकुलरली अमंग्स द वाइट स्टूडेंट्स. तो दे इवन बिलीव्ड इन काइंड ऑफ रिफॉर्मिज्म इन द सेंस कि उन्होंने एक टाइम पे उन्होंने सोचा कि जॉन ऑफ कैनेडी होगा जो सबसे अच्छा प्रेसिडेंट होगा, हम शायद वोट से उसको मतलब इलेक्ट करेंगे. एंड दे वेंट टू द विलेजेस, व्हेन दे द रूरल एरियाज वेयर द ब्लैक फार्मर्स एंड वर्कर्स वर रीलिंग अंडर स्लेवरी, तो उनको रियलिटी के बारे में मतलब पता चलता है जिनसे वो सेग्रीगेटेड रहे थे. बट देन अगेन डिड द फर्स्ट मूवमेंट्स directly linked the issues that America was having with imperialism? I don't think it was so. They were actually fighting against the symptoms of imperialism maybe. But when during the Vietnam War, जब कोऑप्टेशन वगैरह शुरू हुआ था, मतलब फोर्सफुल मिलिट्री के अंदर मतलब उन लोगों को रिक्रूटमेंट करने के बारे में जब अमेरिकन गवर्नमेंट सोचती है, करती है, तब जाकर एक तरीके का मिलिटेंट मूवमेंट होता है, बिल्डअप होता है. And later on also we see how like there were movements inside America itself which was disconnected from the workers movement that was happening in America, which believed in kind of like students will be the moving force, which obviously later on proved to be wrong, in the sense that without creating a larger mass movement, without being part of the larger mass movement, no change can be observed. अब मतलब मैं 8 साल से भी दिल्ली विश्वविद्यालय में हूँ, मतलब मैंने देखा है कि दिल्ली विश्वविद्यालय में क्या क्या तरीके के बदलाव आए हैं. जैसे कि कॉमरेड सूरज ने अभी थोड़ी देर पहले रखा था, हम दोनों सेम ही बैच के थे जब हम दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी में आए थे. तो मुझे याद है 2019-20 का टाइम था जब एक तरीके का चर्निंग यूनिवर्सिटी के अंदर हो रहा था, स्पेशली जब एंटी सीए प्रोटेस्ट शाहीन बाग से लेकर दिल्ली के अलग अलग कोनों में जब एंटी सीए प्रोटेस्ट जब लीड हो रहा था, तब यूनिवर्सिटी के अंदर भी एक तरीके का पोलिटिसाइजेशन, एक रेडिकलिज्म आ रहा था. And then the JNU fee hike movement happened, where students from Delhi University went in solidarity and was part of the movement. So also there is attempts in Delhi University particularly to kind of create a stereotype with JNU and Jamia, क्योंकि दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी का नेचर बहुत अलग है जामिया और JNU के कंपैरिजन में. 1.5 लाख के ऊपर स्टूडेंट्स पढ़ते हैं दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी के अंदर. More than 80 colleges are there under Delhi University. So it is a kind of different activism. And it's very much related with the immediate localities also. जैसे दिल्ली के अंदर के जो immediate localities हैं, उधर के caste powers, उधर के जो भी powers हैं, उससे बहुत ज्यादा related है. पर उसके बावजूद हम देखते हैं कि एंटी सीए के प्रोटेस्ट के टाइम पे और जेएनयू के टाइम के प्रोटेस्ट पे कैसे एक तरीके का, जस्ट गिव मी अ सेकंड कॉमरेड. तो हम देखते हैं कि एंटी सीए प्रोटेस्ट पे और फी हाइक जेएनयू फी हाइक के मूवमेंट के टाइम पे कैसे एक तरीके का सोलिडारिटी बिल्ड होता है। देन अगेन आई रिमेंबर वेरी क्लियरली उस टाइम पे दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी टीचर्स एसोसिएशन जो था, एक लेफ्ट टीचर्स फ्रंट मतलब उस दिन जीती थे डीटीएफ। तो कैसे एक तरीके का मिलिटेंट मूवमेंट हुआ था कि गेट तोड़ के प्रोफेसर अंदर घुस गए थे वीसी बंगलाओं के, एंड दे ऑक्यूपाइड द बंगला फॉर 2-3 days स्ट्रेट, विच इज ऑल्सो रिलेटेड टू लाइक द स्टूडेंट्स इन द सेंस कि मतलब वो इसलिए हो रहा था क्योंकि दो गेस्ट लेक्चरर्स like no permanent appointments had happened for years, so they were protesting for making the faculties permanent, और उसमें भी स्टूडेंट्स ने बढ़ चढ़कर हिस्सा लिया। then comes the lockdown and after that we know कि लॉकडाउन के बाद किस तरीके से यूनिवर्सिटी इलेक्शंस करना तो दूर, उन्होंने अलग अलग तरीके के नियम लेकर आना शुरू कर दिए दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी में। सबसे रिसेंटली जो था वो ये है कि 72 घंटे पहले हमें यूनिवर्सिटी से परमिशन लेना पड़ेगा कि यूनिवर्सिटी के खिलाफ अगर हमें प्रोटेस्ट करना है तो। एंड देन द क्लैम डाउन दैट इज हैपनिंग इनसाइड यूनिवर्सिटी स्पेसेस, in the sense recently, like a few weeks back, like a few days before back only, Zakir Hussain Delhi College mein RSS organizes an event with the complete approval of the principal itself. The principal goes and sits at the event. The students don't even get a classroom booked for organizing a study circle or something, and this is done by RSS. But thankfully students there resisted against it. Under SFI they resisted against it, and then what happens? Police is called inside the campus and they try to kidnap the students there. So this is the condition of university. और दूसरी बात यह है कि जैसे कि एनईपी के बारे में बताया गया था, तो एनईपी के थ्रू क्या एम किया जा रहा है, विच इज डायरेक्टली लिंक टू 4 लेबर कोड्स ऑल्सो, इन द सेंस कि न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी इंप्लीमेंट किया गया था एक तरीके का स्टूडेंट्स को मशीन के अंदर बदलने के लिए, क्लासरूम्स के अंदर रिस्ट्रिक्ट करने के लिए, सिलेबस में जो बदलाव आए हैं। एंड देन कम्स द 4 लेबर कोड्स, इन द सेंस कि 4 लेबर कोड्स क्या है कि मतलब मैक्सिमम कॉन्ट्रैक्चुअलाइजेशन हो जॉब का।
I'm sorry, but it's time for the next speaker.
Yeah. I'll just wind up, comrade. तो okay, yeah. But I'm saying this thing कि अभी जो एक तरीके का दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी के अंदर क्योंकि हॉस्टल्स नहीं है, स्टूडेंट्स स्टे इन फ्लैट्स, तो now the LPG crisis directly have came to kitchens. Delhi University has been a space where anti-imperialist struggles are tried to be stereotyped, but now it is directly getting linked to the war that is happening there. Like we are looking for like gas cylinders across Delhi. There are students who are not even able to eat anything. I mean, they come from marginalized background. That's why they stay in flats with like 6-7 people staying in a single room in dingy conditions. और उधर gas cylinder नहीं है. And the university and the administration has मतलब उन्होंने हाथ खड़ा कर दिया है. तो the war has reached kitchens and the radicalism is happening slowly but steadily. And I hope that the movement will get stronger only. And obviously anti-imperialist struggle needs to get, and we have a legacy of that. So that's what I hope. Baki Jai Bhim Lal Salam.
Thank you, comrade. We can move on to Nadia. Nadia.
Hello, comrades. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I apologize for the noise around me. I'm really sorry. Very honored to be sharing this space with these amazing speakers who have been very important student leaders. So, comrades, I am sort of speaking from Ambedkar University. I'm a student who has been recently expelled and also won 2 court cases against the university. And just wrapping up some last technicalities, and we'll be having another victory soon. Because I've been invited as a part of Ambedkar University, I would want to sort of talk about this university as well, university space as well, and sort of link it to what exactly the topic of this conclave is. So, comrades, I've been an activist for around 5 years now, 5-6 years. And throughout my journey as a student activist, slowly there were some questions that I was asking. So my journey obviously started with me taking up these small contradictions that we had with the administration, which made the administration anti-student. But that was sort of a fact that we had just assumed that this is a university where where the administration is taking up anti-student policies. Maybe it is because the proctor is corrupt. Maybe it is because the vice chancellor wants more money. But yeah, we generally assumed that it is the administration that is an evil force. Eventually, slowly, I realized how there is a larger pattern here, and it is the government which is at fault. So this is there is a kind of government that wants to sort of put more pressure towards private education, wants to systematically sort of shut down government institutions, and the government is just evil, and that is why they want to do it. And that was what my understanding was. Once I understood a little bit more about the nature of the fascist government, why the government is quote unquote evil, why does it want to get rid of social welfare for students, why does it want to get rid of things like reservations and other uh, sort of policies which makes education more accessible for students. It is just because they're evil, and eventually I became a student of development studies and was privileged to read a lot about Prabhat Patnaik. So basically, what the nature of this conclave is, matlab the topic of this conclave, which is students against imperialism. And I think Sudhira had introduced the concept pretty well as well. I'm a huge fan of Prabhat Patnaik, and I think that what the way he has explained imperialism makes complete perfect sense to what we as students are facing today. The kind of oppression that we are facing, the kind of sort of systematic shutdown of public education spaces, and sort of pushing students away from education. So I'll be very brief about this, but basically colonial powers used to extract wealth. The nature of capital is such that it has to constantly expand. Through a lot of legislations and a lot of peace after World War, and through the process of Cold War, countries sort of realized that it is not all right to sort of directly impose. Colonialism is a bad thing. Sovereignty is a huge pop word now, and disobeying sovereignty is evil, and you shouldn't do that. So yes, so there are different ways that the ruling class sort of started taking, and imperialism, especially economic imperialism, especially it's not even special. It is economic imperialism. Was the way that they could extract maximum wealth and exploit the global south. It was direct in some cases. In some cases, there were direct coups in countries. In some cases, there were more diplomatic relations, and so third world countries were sort of bullied into joining trade agreements which were disastrous for the country's own development. And since USSR had fallen, countries didn't really have that much bargaining power anymore, and there was direct bullying. And in other places, there was obviously trade competition and direct monopolizing of the market, which happened to this. Now, Manmohan Singh is the prime minister that, there's a lot of nostalgia around him right now, especially because of the kind of years, the kind of decade that we have faced. And Manmohan Singh was an influential finance minister when the the liberalization, privatization movement basically happened in India. One thing was that there was a group of economists called the Chicago Boys who came up with this idea of expansion and like the slow deterioration of Keynesian economics, welfarist economics basically. And eventually what happens is these guys sort of look for people in third world who they can give really nice and bright scholarships to, invite them over and teach them this new neoliberal type of economics. But the thing about neoliberal economics is that, like all forms of phases of capitalism basically, is that it eventually falls into a crisis. And right now the crisis has eventually led us to a war. So the capitalism is in a huge crisis. Okay. And we face the direct consequences of it, as Comrade Noel and Gopika had mentioned before me. Students obviously directly face the consequence of it, as do all citizens of the third world. So, where exactly does education come into play in all of this? So, obviously, education and student spaces are one aspect which have to be privatized. When I was basically growing up, I'm not that old right now. I've been in education space for also just 5 years right now. And I'm almost about to finish my master's. But when I was in school, basically, I had seen a lot of my basically the premier institutions where you should be studying were JNU, DU, Ambedkar University.
It is time for the next speaker. Just
Yeah. All right, comrade. I just lined up. But yeah, like eventually, there was a extremely bad repression that these kinds of universities had faced. Student friendly policies were removed. Fees is increasing, ever increasing. The university which I come from is a public university, but the fees is around what 45,000 for a master's course. Other things which used to make public education accessible was mm, systematically removed, and there is basically an attempt to shut down public institutions altogether. And at the same time, if there's a very sinister pattern where, as these institutions are closing down in Delhi, newer institutions which are private would pop up around around the circumference of the city. So yeah, this is just one aspect of how imperialism sort of shuts down these spaces. Student movements are obviously there to resist these anti-student kinds of things. And another aspect which I would just briefly mention is that students are usually the most revolutionary force. Once you leave students uneducated, once you leave an 18-year-old in desperate need for money because a degree is essentially worthless in this kind of economy where there's so much unemployment, then yes, the student is going to not really care about their higher education, not pursue education, and directly go for a job. And the revolutionary nature of students, the revolutionary nature of youth, we have so much energy in us. We are just learning about the world. That is what is like an extreme threat to this sort of system. So yes, comrades, I would like to end it here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, comrade. We can move on to Vivek.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, comrade.
I'm really sorry about the network issues. It's a university Wi-Fi that is like not functioning, so it is like a very immediate issue that I might have to address next. So that is there. So first of all, thank you for inviting me for this program. It's my first time joining, but by seeing the panelists and the people join, I'm very privileged to be here. I'm unlike I think one panelist mentioned, like all of us are from social sciences, but unlike other, maybe I was a pure science person that is came into the social science space later on. I'm a PhD scholar now in public health and community medicine. So that thing is like that path is little different for me, but I managed to be about this so imperialism against this students against imperialism. That topic is little broad, and like when we talk about imperialism, that is we think that it is distant. Every time we call for this against war, students against war, all those things, those topics, those political topics. So we always think it is distant, but the current problems that we think like all the students understood that is coming into our life, into our bubble. So these thing about the LPG crisis, all around campuses, mess is getting shut down. Their favorite tea shop is getting shut down. Those things made students think that okay, this is not some distant issue, some America, Israel, some war. It's not some war that is happening so far away that we are very distant from it. So those things, I think it made students think that yeah, it affects us also. So and I think some other speakers also talked about that shrinking of our the student spaces. So I'm from Central University of Kerala, and being that university is from Kerala, but the campus is inside Kerala, but it feels like a different place altogether, because the spaces, the democratic space we have outside, and the spaces we enjoy, that liberal spaces, that is not inside the campus. They are getting clamped down. Everything is getting clamped down even more. So and like same issues, like I think all of our issues have a common thing, that is like okay, their administration is clamping down on little things. That end of that space is not going out overnight. It come of the things the other panelists mentioned. I remember all of them have parallels here also. So those kind of problems, like if a music program is happening inside campus, we have to send them our that music list and they will screen it, and those things. Like if we are sending a poster, then that call will come from the administration that it is like had to take it down. Those kind of things are like little by little. It is like they're outright not banning it, but they're irritating us to submission. So those kind of problems are happening all across India. That is like even in a little college, it is happening, and we see this issue like in everything. So this kind of we had there's a suicide of a scholar that is happened 2 years back. We were like we protested against it, and like and the thing is like that teacher that everyone knows, that it's still under investigation, but those kind of problems made students think that okay, these kind of problems, that is like this structural systemic problems that is happening in our life. So those kind of so when I think about imperialism and students movements, first of all, even though it is prevalent, the many of the 80% of the college that is not into activism, that is like so these neoliberal systems that they make people think that okay, you have to complete a degree, get a work, and be that kind of workers that is like submissive and that is like just for the sake of working. So those kind of arguments that is very prevalent inside the student body. So 80% of students won't care about anything that is happening with them other than what is very immediate for them. So that is that's a very big shock for me to understand that, to hear that from the students and telling them they are apolitical. Those kind of things that we have to push back, and like we have to make them understood that these kind of things are there, and like that thing is like, even though if it seems distant, it will happen in your life. So the message is like you have to speak up for the person next to you, and like then from there we have to build it into a movement. So that's all.
Thank you, comrade. Considering how we have gotten a few words from all of the comrades, we can move on to a moderated session where we have a few questions that we can ask everyone. But before that, I'd like to ask the viewers, if all the other participants, if they could send in some questions. If they have any questions, this is a good time to. So for the next 15 minutes, we'll just discuss about a few questions that anyone has as well. So with that, we can move forward to a question that I had as I listened to all of you speak. All of you talked about how the effect of imperialism is does affect institutions, and it's not just this detached event that is happening. It's something that affects students' lives, and how it's closely related to neoliberalism and hypercapitalism and all of that right now. I was wondering that, and all of you were also talking about how it's very necessary to have student organizations and student resistance at a time like this. I was wondering, how do students organize and educate within the increasingly repressive institutes and repressive institutions that we function within, and also like within a larger economic system that encourages depoliticization of students. And we have such tight schedules, as a few comrades are talking about. We have such tight schedules and constant examinations. And how does a student basically read and organize beyond the fear of being left behind in the economic state that we exist in, or in the society that we exist in right now? Any of the speakers can take this up.
Can I speak?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, like, I have felt in the sense, I mean, how to organize won't be like nobody would be able to answer that as far as I think, because only the students who are studying inside the university or college space will be able to devise a tactics which will work out for that college or campus. जैसे कि मतलब मैंने अलग अलग कॉलेजों में पढ़ाई की है, और अलग अलग कॉलेजों में अलग अलग तरीके के एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन थे. कुछ थोड़ा लिबरल थे तो कुछ थोड़ा एग्रेसिव, और मतलब कुछ थोड़ा, और अभी थोड़ा और ज्यादा क्लैम डाउन वाला. पर इसके अंदर भी हम टैक्टिक्स डिवाइस करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि किस तरीके से इसको नेविगेट किया जाए. पर सबसे प्राइमरी चीज तो ये है कि हम कितने लोगों तक हम पहुंच पा रहे हैं जब हम कैंपेन कर रहे हैं. तो मतलब अचानक से जैसे कि कॉल कर रहे हैं प्रोटेस्ट के लिए, तब तो इन द सेंस कि नथिंग लाइक वुड चेंज इफ लाइक 10-15 और लाइक द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन केडर्स ओनली आर देयर. पर जब हम बच्चों तक जा रहे हैं, बच्चों तक हम संवाद कर रहे हैं, कन्वर्सेशन बिल्ड हो रहा है, तो a kind of like consciousness is also developed parallelly, but that also depends according to the campus nature कि कौन से कैंपस में आप काम कर रहे हो. तो मतलब आई couldn't give an answer, but that is what I believe कि मतलब कि nobody who is doing activism in one campus can actually tell the other person how to, मतलब it will be all like different tactics.
Any other comrade who wants to take that up?
I think I agree with Comrade Noel completely. And the importance I was saying is building the kind of narratives and building the kind of consciousness. We have the popular culture, the kind of public opinions built around with a large amount of money, capital has been put definitely to make sure that things that is especially regarding resistance is not reaching students. So our campus spaces, it is different for everyone. For HCU, it has been the practice historically for SFI to have room-to-room campaigns. Like for every political issue, every protest, we will be reaching out to students. It doesn't actually necessarily turn into the numbers of like people attending protests or people attending talks or anything. But definitely, it is building a narrative. It is building a kind of understanding in between. And I think along with that, the only thing that as organizations, being part of organization, only thing we can offer to students is the camaraderie. And the camaraderie actually doesn't only involve just in the terms of like basic friendship. As we know, it is far beyond that, and that kind of an mutual understanding, solidarity. That is actually something that we cannot actually like all these issues in front of a student, all the kind of struggle that the student has to face in its own is there. That is not something that any organization or anyone of us can deal with in personal capacity or organizational capacity. But definitely giving that kind of a support, that kind of a solidarity, and then them having that kind of a very humane connection and very innate connection to the organization, to the movement. I think that is the only way to actually build that. Other than, as mentioned, it is again different for like particular situation, particular campuses. But in larger sense, the kind of thing that we can do is build that kind of solidarity among students, that kind of trust among students, and then also taking up the kind of, and always activism comes with its own necessary kind of sacrifices that one has to do, and that kind of sacrifices that doesn't comes out of one's own personal moral or any kind of expectation. It comes from the kind of solidarity that we gives, and then the kind of consciousness that we build in people for the need and the cause and the importance of what they are doing. So that is something that we have to have in a day, everyday kind of practice, I guess.
Thank you, comrade. I think I would also like to ask the opinions of JMI and JNU and universities where there is increasingly, as in currently, there's a lot of surveillance and a lot of repression. So, how does building a student organization work there in this current scenario?
Hello, comrade. So, like all of the other comrades have said, organizing tactics would be very different in different universities. But in JNU, if you see, which is why I think union elections to happen across universities is very important, because unions provide that strength to students despite all of the repression, despite all of the punitive measures the administration is taking. Students have shown willingness to come for the calls given by union, and in the movement, that the ongoing movement going on in JNU, some of the marches we have seen almost 1,500 mobilization, and there are talks where union has organized where we have had far lesser crowd. So it is and we have been able to bring in most of the people when we have taken up 3 days of rigorous campaign, going to the hostels, passing slip-ins, talking to the students. There are 4 union office members and there are several counselors. So when each of us are going, interacting with the students and trying and communicating to them the urgency with which we have given a call, I think that has always helped people. And we have seen that despite all of the repression, students have been willing to come and associate with us when we have shown the confidence, when we have shown them that we have a plan of action, this is what we are fighting for, we are willing to go to this levels to fight for the students and to safeguard the rights that students have won through years and years of struggle. Students have shown a willingness to come. And one thing, I think, with the sort of agenda and with the propaganda that is going on, erasure of history is a constant agenda of the RSS BJP, be it in our NCRT books, be it the erasure of all of the histories. So I think it's very important for us as activists to keep reminding students that students have always had the strength. So if it comes to AUD or DU or Jamia or Kerala University, there's always been a history of successful student agitations, successful student movements, and it is important for us to fight against this amnesia and to keep reminding students that we need not be, we need not be silenced. There were far larger times, far graver times, like when emergency was going on. There is the image of Comrade Sitaram Yechuri speaking to Indira Gandhi and telling her and asking her, demanding her a resignation from the post of chancellor. So such images of the anti-FIHIC movement, where we were at the forefront. Union was at the forefront. Comrade Oishi was the JNUSU president. So it is important to keep reminding students what is the strength we hold as a collective. It is important to keep reminding them of successful student movements. It is important to show that if we come and extend solidarity with each other, then the forces that we're dealing with will have to bend their knees in front of the students.
I would also like to ask about how this works with basically after the change in student demographics, after the fee hikes, and also CUET. How has the approach changed towards how it has been historically done, and now we have a different demographic. So how does that work?
So this change in demography, like earlier, what used to happen, there used to be entrance exam for each individual university. So you already have an imagination of what a university space like JNU or what a university space like HCU will have. And there are students specifically studying for that entrance exam, anticipating this sort of academic space and intellectual space, and then joining those universities. Now, because it is a centralized system, everyone is opting for these universities, and not many might be specifically interested in this university. But because of the MCQ format of these entrance examination, they come to the university. So I would not at the onset want to discredit the students who come to the university. They have come in through the same format that most of us who are sitting here have come through. But what challenge that has posed in front of the activist is that there is a far greater need for us to open up the discourse again and again, to sort of reading circles become a great format. Politicization through the format of elections and otherwise becomes an agenda. And when you're talking to a classroom, when you're talking to a student who is initially joining the university, you're not talking to them with the assumption that they know already a lot about the politics that you are trying to do in the campus. They might not be aware of the left politics. They might be coming from spaces where progressive politics is not that much talked about. So it is important for us to open up these spaces without any prejudice, without any stigma, and without any sort of forethought that we have to open up these spaces of discussion to all of them. And only these direct and continuous politicization campaigns, that in different campuses the strategy might be very different. But what we usually do in JNU is take up the minutest of minute issue that that student is directly dealing with on a daily basis, to show that student mobilization, organization, and student collectives can solve those issues. We, as activists, we first approach the water coolers of your hostels functional? Are you getting Wi-Fi in your dorms? What do you think about the hostel infrastructure? The issues that are directly linked with the day-to-day activities of the student community. By taking that up, we are showing that it is only and only through unionization, it is an only through mobilization that we will be able to address these issues. So this becomes a starting point.
Thank you, comrade. We actually have a pretty big question in the chat. I'd like it if we could move on to that. And I'd also invite all the other comrades to speak on this as well. So the question goes, regarding the reduction or policing of student spaces, I find that online spaces too are being increasingly infiltrated, with calls for solidarity, discussions being documented and reported on by fellow students who then pass the information on to higher ups. Any advice on how to navigate something like this, where the pushback is at a horizontal level rather than simply vertical? I think this is very relevant to HCU and I guess even JMI to a level, because there has been reporting of students from the same by their fellow peers. I guess there have been events where
Yeah, that has been the case. I think now that at this point of time we have to understand the ways of organizing, as we are saying, physical spaces along with how the digital spaces has been a great avenue of organizing at a first point. Like see how BSML is continuing, and this kind of thing has been becoming important, and the kind of pushback is also something that is very given. For example, recently one case happened here is that one of the ABVP person has created a fake kind of screenshot saying that one of the cadre from one progressive organization put up a status saying very bad words about a religion, like Hindu religion, and they have filed this under Proctor, and Proctor directly sent it to Register, and Register directly filed an FIR on this based on this fake screenshot. And after that, what happened is an immediate protest has given from all the progressive organizations except ABUP, and like making sure that administration is accountable. And I think so far, considering HCU, we have the kind of privilege to have the spaces in administration. Like we have a conversational space with the administration, and that is a negotiating space that the history of the movement here has made sure is continuing, which is something that is under threat at this point can be taken up at any point also. So I think there are like all the common groups, as in the public or physical spaces. In digital spaces, also increasingly the kind of right wing and students who's not maybe very politically aligned, also who would be maybe neutral to us, or who would be somebody who won't be expecting, could be someone who's not readily understanding the thing. Maybe if we have a conversation, like a political conversation or debate in a group, there are an increasing number of students who get irritated and says, take this out of our space and it is not right. People who get irritated when there is wall writings in campuses and in when in hostels. So such a kind of students are like apolitical students are there, and it is always again on us kind of responsibility falls back to us, at least in case of reaching out to the political students and to make them understand. Like whenever we consider them as our enemies, as I said, without any kind of prejudice, we have to approach them as Gopika also mentioned, because students are coming from here as have no any kind of experience or any kind of introduction to the kind of politics that we are talking about. So that is something that we have to build in a capacity that is possible. I know it is not a very like possible avenue also for many of us and many of the campus spaces, and especially TIS and all the increased surveillance and all. But I think if there is any possibility of like the who's at least are apolitical and is genuinely open to conversations, that is something that we have to take up and take care of. And if there is any kind of organized digital space attack from the right wing, in that sense, if it's happening as been happening in our campus, it is something that again comes under our like organizing capacity, like bringing together all the progressive forces and then resisting it in the university level, or resisting it in the spaces of maybe digital spaces, even it comes to that. So the kind of spilling over of digital and physical is something that something comparatively new, and I think our organizing and our politics, but is something that we have to build more. I think have more conversation and build more kind of conversation, discussions, and discourses around, so that we can also have that kind of effective impacts when it comes to the digital areas as well. And I don't think there is any kind of one way or direct answer to the question in that sense as well.
Thank you, comrade. I'll just check if there are any other questions. Does anyone else have any other question to ask? Okay, seeing none, I think we can move on to the conclusion of this session. I was wondering if any comrade had any last comment to make. Okay, so yeah, sorry, yes, comrade. Comrade Sreshta, you wanted to speak?
It's just that a point that I wanted to add to
Sure,
the,
yes.
both of the points that we've discussed. The point number one that you've proposed and the question number here. In my case, or maybe to the demographic that I am exposed to here, it have always been the one way that is organizing the study camps constantly. That have pulled us the more number of cadre and the comradeship, and exposing this comradeship and this solidarity into the people have always strengthened us to move forward as a union and also as a council now that we are currently. So see this diversion of complaining in a vertical space have always been the divisive force towards the student unity and student activism inside the campuses. But it's sad that we are waking up to the fact that now it is being backed up by the some organizations or some administrative heads who are trying to sit above us. But this have always been the villain of the story of student organization, and we have been successively trying to subvert that down. And maybe the more comradeship, as Comrade Asika have mentioned, what we all can offer is the comradeship to the students, and constantly doing it and putting our effort into it is the answer to all of it, I see it.
Thank you, comrade. Any other last comments? Okay, seeing none, I think we can move on to concluding the session. So there were a lot of there was a lot of conversation around how this is not a series of isolated crises. All the issues that we have across campuses, they are not very isolated. It's based off of something which is very systemic. It's basically a restructuring of education, and how the comrades, multiple comrades spoke about how right from LPG to the NEP, universities are being reshaped to decide who gets access to educational spaces, and how much space needs to exist for dissent, basically. There is shrinking of student spaces, and there's basically all the mechanisms for justice are delayed, and there is an overall decrease in the political capacity of students as well. And we had Nadia talk about how Prabhat Patnaik argues about how imperialism today operates through these institutional mechanisms as well, and how there is a control on the policy and ideology, especially in countries like India, and how the larger implications of it in the educational institutions are also pointing towards this very institutional control that's happening, and how there is an active alignment of institutions with the larger economic system that is present right now. And also, there was a lot of conversation about how, beyond all this, students can find a way to push back, and the various ways in which they can push back, and how student organization and education is still possible within these spaces. How we need to reclaim these spaces, and protesting and standing against the some very strong institutional forces that we have, and several organizations that are not allowing freedom in student campuses is very important. So I hope I have covered most of the points, and on and how it is very important for the work to go on, and for student organizations to exist freely. That would be the conclusion. I would like to move to Manu for the thank you note.
Hi, Sudhira. So now that we're
Sorry, yes,
coming
Niyati.
towards the so now that we've come to the end of the panel discussion, I would really like to thank all of the comrades that joined as panelists today and gave us their valuable time and shared their thoughts with us. So one of the points early on made by Comrade Sooraj was about the shrinking of discussion spaces with peers for interdisciplinary learning, and the depoliticization of our campuses and our educations by the tightly packed schedules that students have. So I feel like this rings really true for all of us right now, and I'm really grateful for everyone who has made the time to show up today and give their thoughts, despite how tiring our academic schedules are right now. This has been the third of our 3 pilot events leading up to the 8th consecutive Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture. So this pilot event today was preceded by a study circle and also a postcard design competition. So we gave students got the opportunity to showcase their creativity as well as have a study circle, which is increasingly becoming rare on campuses. So I'm really glad we have been able to execute this the 8th time in a row and show up in such numbers from all of our respective campuses, despite the changing environment in institutes all over the country. I also want to thank the BSML organizing committee, to Sudhira, especially for moderating this discussion, and Manu and Arzol, our conveners from Mumbai and Hyderabad campuses also. A bunch of our panelists today mentioned Prabhat Patnaik and how his work has, led to them learning so much about what is experienced in the global south as a result of imperialism. So on that note, I would like to invite everyone who has attended today to the Bhagat Singh Memorial Lecture by Prabhat Patnaik, which will be happening on the 4th of April, which is Saturday. So do join in. We would love to see you all there as well. And thank you again for attending.